What's up? It is Tuesday and we're back on Small Ball. Probably going to be an abbreviated show today. I'm liking this 5:30-ish time a little bit better. The audio, something seems to be a bit wrong with the audio and the video here. So please let me know as I hear notify the world that we are live. I'm really excited to be back. It is Tuesday, of course, and I think some of you might have a bit of an idea what that means. Of course, Tuesday top 10 on the way. Probably our last Tuesday top 10, not our last Tuesday top 10, but our last top 10, our last positional top 10. We have relief pitchers today. I'm probably not going to do DHs because that just seems a little bit odd. But you know what? If I decide to, then we'll do it. And that's just kind of how this show works. So before I get to the Tuesday top 10, first off, I want to welcome you back to Small Ball. Thank you for tuning in. Not sure if I'm going to do a show tomorrow. I'm going to try to transition to Sunday instead of a Wednesday schedule, but more on that later. I want to start the show today with this. Yesterday, Patrick Mahomes, it could have happened a couple of days ago, but seemingly yesterday, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs signed a $450 million contract extension with the Kansas City Chiefs with incentives that can be up to $503 million of total value that he is going to acquire by playing for the Chiefs for the next 10 seasons. But essentially, if he plays standard fare and does not, and obviously they hold him on that contract for its entirety and they don't release him and whatever, the case may be there. As long as he stays on the Chiefs for 10 years, he's guaranteed $450 million. Now, I've said this over and over again. This is a baseball show. This is not a sports talk show. There are a plethora of sports talk shows out there. I don't want to, get too monotonous, right? Repeat what's been said. I want to stick with baseball because I feel like baseball is underreported in the media. But I want to start the show with this today, and here's why the Mahomes contract is relevant. $450 million, that sounds eerily similar to a contract that we saw signed in Major League Baseball not too long ago. And of course, I am speaking of the Mike Trout contract extension. And when that extension of $450 million was signed by Mike Trout prior to him hitting the market, he decided he wanted to be in LA. They decided 450 was a good number. They agreed. That's great. Largest contract in MLB history. At that point, the largest contract in the history of American professional sports, I believe all of professional sports. And many said that it was a pretty substantial amount, even for the value that he brings to that franchise. Personally, I can't really speak to the financial breakdown of what that does to their system, their financial plans, and what have you. In terms of value, $450 million is a pretty penny for somebody who hasn't won a playoff game. And we've talked about this on numerous occasions, how much of that is on him and how much isn't. And I'm not going to get specifically into that. But I do think that for $450 million, the largest contract in the history of professional sports, there should be some level of team success to your name. Okay? I'm not even arguing here in this argument that he's not worth $450 million. I think he's worth slightly less. However, there were analytics people who said he's not worth $450 million. He's worth double that. His mathematical value, the analytics determined that Mike Trout is worth close to a $900 million contract extension. That's not in practice what he's worth. That is literally, according to the math, what he should be making. So let's say, for example, the Angels had signed Mike Trout to an $850 million contract extension, which analytics people say would have been a beneficial move for them to have made. Patrick Mahomes signs a $450 million deal. If Patrick Mahomes and Mike Trout sign the same level of contract, you would think that they should bring equal value to their teams. Now you'll say, hold on, football has a salary cap. Okay, the Kansas City Chiefs payroll is almost exactly what the Angels payroll is at this very moment after the Mahomes signing. It's even a little bit more depending on the moves that they make going forward in the offseason, the Chiefs. So that logic does not apply. They have the same payroll. They are paying their players the same exact amount. It's right around $153 million. If Mike Trout had signed an extension double what Patrick Mahomes signed to, logic would tell us that he's worth double the value of Patrick Mahomes. So let's analyze this for a second. Patrick Mahomes plays the number one most important position in his sport. He is arguably, I would say second, but arguably the best at that position in his sport. And last season, only a couple of months ago, brought a title to Kansas City for the first time since he had in his entire lifetime. Okay, brings a title to Kansas City. So most important position, arguably the best at his position. I think most experts would say the best at his position, and brought a title and was the best player on a championship team to Kansas City. Now let's look at Mike Trout. Mike Trout does not play catcher, which is the most important position, does not play shortstop, which is the second most important position. I would argue pitcher is more valuable than the position that Mike Trout plays. So he plays probably, depending on how you want to look at pitcher, the third or fourth most important position in his sport, center field. Is he the best at his position? I think similarly to Patrick Mahomes, most experts would say yes. I think last season, more value was brought to his team by Cody Bellinger, by Mookie Betts. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that Mike Trout is the best player in center field. I have no problem with that argument. Third or fourth most important position, arguably the best at his position. Let's say the best at his position. Did he bring a championship to LA? No. In 9 years in that organization, he has yet to win a playoff game. He has appeared in one postseason series, and he was swept. He, being his team, was swept 3-0. So he's 0-3 in the playoffs. Okay. Obviously, there are other factors, right? The quarterback has a lot more of an impact than Mike Trout. But to have never won a playoff game, this is a LA second biggest market in the country. No whatsoever success, no excitement around the team, right? In his 9-year tenure, and he signs a $450 million contract. Had he signed an $850 million contract, we would think that he's worth double what a Super Bowl MVP, best at the most important position in his sport, would be, which he's, as we just stated, not that. To me, Mike Trout, again, like I said, plays the third or fourth most important position. So in football, I would say quarterback is number one. I would personally say left tackle is probably number two. I would say number three, probably edge rusher, right? And then I would say 3 and 4, I think, similarly to our pitcher center field argument, I think if you have a guy, an interior defensive lineman who can really wreak havoc on the passing game and running game, I think you can argue is maybe third or fourth most important. So Mike Trout, in my estimation, is eerily similar to Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald, many would say, is the best pure football player in the world right now. Plays the third or fourth most important position. And brings a lot of value to his team, but not enough to carry them into the postseason or certainly win postseason games. Aaron Donald's a $16 million player. He makes $16 million a year. Mike Trout makes $60,000 per at-bat. He makes $3 million a month, and he's making $450 million over the course of his new contract extension. But analytics people say he's worth double that. Okay? So if he were to make double that and make, let's say, $80 million a year, which obviously we understand would never happen, is he worth 5 times as much as Aaron Donald, who both play the third or fourth best position, who are both arguably, but there's a substantial argument to be made against them, but arguably the best player in their particular sport, and have not appeared in the postseason last year? Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, many would argue, although Aaron Donald may be more talented, more of a pure football talent, I don't think you can really argue that Aaron Donald is as valuable as a football player as Patrick Mahomes. That's why Patrick Mahomes is making $45 million a year and Aaron Donald is making $16. And the salary cap argument doesn't apply here because, like I said, the Angels' payroll is $153 million, which is almost exactly, if not less, depending on what the Chiefs decide to do going forward this offseason, than that of the Kansas City Chiefs. So essentially what I'm trying to say is analytics people determine that Mike Trout is worth $850 million, double that of the equivalent of the most valuable player in his sport. Mike Trout, at this point, I can't say is the most valuable player in his sport. And even if he was, you're going to have a really hard time arguing that he's worth double that of Patrick Mahomes. How does that come into practice? I don't know. Should the Angels not have signed him? I don't know. I think they could have either rebuilt or held on to Mike Trout. And I think, in holding on to Mike Trout, they remain relevant for the next 10 years at a bare minimum. So I'm not even arguing that it was a bad contract. But for analytics people to say that he's worth double that is completely absurd. Now, let's get into the meat of the discussion today, our Tuesday top 10. Relief pitchers. This is so difficult. It's really difficult to do relief pitchers because it's a position that changes a lot year to year, right? A lot of guys don't have the consistency, that they do at other positions. It's a position where stats are very telling, which makes it even more difficult to overlook, let's say, a breakout year. It's hard to determine, and we'll talk about specifics. A lot of relievers have these out of nowhere really good or really bad seasons, and it's really difficult to overlook that because as a pitcher, statistics, in my opinion, are so, not advanced statistics, but traditional statistics are so telling of your value, right? I think ERA is as good of a statistic as you can get in any sport because it's precisely your value, in my opinion. So there are some other factors, and we're going to talk about that. So here we go. Number 10, most valuable, the 10th best reliever, how much value they bring to their team in 2020. I guess assuming that, it were a full season, we can say. I have Brandon Workman. So here's an example where a breakout season in 2019, 1.88 ERA, absurd strikeout numbers and only allowed 1 home run in his entire season in 2019. I think the stuff is there. I don't have him any higher than 10. Statistically, last season for sure, he's probably top 3. But I don't see him as a big game pitcher, as a big spot pitcher. I don't think he's a pure closer. I think he is a very nice setup option. But Brandon Workman, it's really difficult to deny the stats of last year. In 71 and 2/3 innings, only gave up 1 home run. But I just don't really trust him in big spots. He only had 16 saves last season. He had 15 holds, but 6 blown saves. So here it comes down to clutch factor. It comes down to experience in that role, and I can only realistically put him at 10. Number 9 is Brad Hand. So sort of the opposite to Brandon Workman. History of success, a lot of experience in the closer role. Last year, not so much. Struggled a little bit. 3.30 ERA is definitely not a top 10 type pitcher. I think he will bounce back. I think especially with the Cleveland pitching or the coaching, especially on the pitching side in Cleveland, Roberto Perez. It seems like, between Brad Hand, Cody Allen, it seems like he's going to have more of a defined role in 2020, and I think he'll bounce back. He has been one of the most consistent back-end relievers over the last 3 to 4 years. Not necessarily a lockdown, bring him in and you kind of just throw in the towel type closer, but consistency up until last year, and dependability with Brad Hand, and I think he'll return to that in 2020. Number 8, I slept on him a little bit last year. I have to give credit where credit is due to Seth Lugo. By no means a lockdown reliever, right? Very, very sort of conservative pitcher, but this is a new age now of relievers where there used to be your starters who were dependable through strikes, innings eaters, and then there were your relievers who didn't have enough command to be starters, but could get people out for 1 inning. Now people are realizing that these hitters are so good, everybody really needs to have command to have success. Aroldis Chapman, who we're going to talk about later, started to struggle because now he is in a sport where his pure velocity isn't good enough to get by. He completely changed, his makeup, completely regenerated his command, and now he is a complete pitcher, and he's really improved himself in that sense. Seth Lugo is a former starter, can give you multiple innings, throws strikes, had ridiculous strikeout total, 104 strikeouts last year as a reliever, for somebody who throws so many strikes. Only 16 walks, 104 strikeouts. Those are incredible numbers there. But really not a lockdown closer. So I can't go any higher than 8. Only 6 saves last year. Wasn't really used in that closer role until Edwin Diaz began to struggle. But I do think in this new age of reliever where people are realizing that everyone has to throw strikes and throw quality strikes to succeed, I think he could actually develop into a solid closer for the Mets, and I have him at 8. Number 7 is Ken Giles. I wasn't really sure where to put him. He's been very up and down the last couple of years, but last year was terrific. I think if he ends up on a team, at the deadline, most people thought that Ken Giles was going to be dealt last year at the deadline. I think depending on how Toronto, it's tough, right? I think he'll be dealt at the deadline because I don't think Toronto is going to succeed early. It seems like Toronto is in a win now kind of a state. I don't think they're rebuilding anymore. They signed Ryu. But I do think they're going to struggle early. They're in the eastern, side of the country now, where they have to play the East, the AL East and the NL East. I don't think they're going to have a lot of success. I think he's going to get moved at the deadline. If he ends up on a team that obviously is in a playoff push, that can really use his services, maybe not in a closer role, but he has such a high ceiling. He's had a couple of absolutely dominant years, particularly last year, just dominant. I mean, people could not touch him in the middle of the year there. 83 strikeouts in 53 innings, a 1.87 ERA. So I think the ceiling is there. I think, his head, he loses his head a little bit. Sometimes he's a little bit erratic. Just a little bit too passionate, in my opinion. And I think if he develops a role that he's comfortable with, he didn't really have a lot of success in the end of his tenure with Houston. He, has struggled a little bit finding a groove. So I think if he can slot into a nice, comfortable role for him, he can get his mind right. He can get his mind and his mindset more consistent. And I think his play will become more consistent as well. So I have Ken Giles at 7. Now 6 is the opposite of Ken Giles. I have Liam Hendriks. If you watch Liam Hendriks pitch, he looks like a spot starter up and down between the big leagues and AAA, but he just throws a lot of quality strikes, and it's this new age type of reliever. I don't think he is. I don't think he has the makeup for the closer role per se. But he is an excellent long reliever. He is an excellent even setup man in a lot of situations. He throws quality strikes. And this new age of reliever, it's tough, right? Because you have, once the starter comes out, you have this big, think about the A's for a second. You got like an AJ Puck as a 6th or 7th inning guy. You have Jesus Luzardo as a 6th or 7th inning guy. Big, hard throwing, somewhat erratic. And then you go to Liam Hendriks in the 8th, who just throws quality strike after quality strike, can throw 4 to 5 plus pitches, spins 2 to 3 different breaking balls. It just really messes up your rhythm. And it's really tough to go from Mike Fiers to Jesus Luzardo to Liam Hendriks and then top it off with whatever, back-end closer they decide to trade for at the deadline. So Liam Hendriks is consistent. He's dependable. He throws strikes. And in this new age of reliever, he is a really good fit for either a long relief role or even a setup man, I think. Liam Hendriks, 6th. Number 5, I got to be honest, Roberto Ozuna is still a top 5 reliever in the game. Up and down, suspension, just last couple of years have not gone his way. But his stuff is as good as anyone in this league, I think. In the back end, control needs to improve for sure, but it has been a little bit. When he's on, no one can touch 2 of his pitches, his fastball / cut fastball, and his big-time slurve, the big sweeping slurve. No one can touch them. And I think, if he, obviously now bouncing back from a suspension, he can come back similar to Ken Giles, find a better role, maybe get traded from Houston. His stuff is just too good not to have him in the top 5, in my opinion. Number 4 is Kirby Yates. So breakout year, right? Obviously, clearly the best reliever in baseball last year, but really the first time he's had, a full season of success. But his numbers last year, I'll read them to you, absolutely absurd. 101 strikeouts and 13 walks in 60 innings. Listen to that one more time. 101 strikeouts and 13 walks in 60 and 2/3 innings. 41 out of 44 save opportunities completed, only gave up 2 home runs and 13 walks in 60 games pitched, and a 1.19 ERA. He gave up 8 runs in the entire season. 8 runs, 2 home runs, 13 walks, and only 3 blown saves in 60 2/3 innings pitched. He looked like last year the only semblance of a complete lockdown reliever that we haven't seen since 2013 in Mariano Rivera. There hasn't been. I think Kenley Jansen had a couple of years, maybe after Mariano Rivera out of his prime. We haven't seen since Kenley Jansen, maybe even back to Mariano Rivera, a complete lockdown, surefire, best in the league relief pitcher. We haven't seen it. Last year we saw Kirby Yates do that. I can't put him higher than 4 because we know how inconsistent relievers can be. Mariano is the only, guy that did it for more than 2 to 3 seasons. Obviously, if he can continue what he did last year, he's the best reliever in the game, the best reliever since Mariano Rivera. But I have no idea. I hope to see if he can replicate that. His stuff isn't really that good. Mariano's wasn't either. But his makeup, his pitchability was incredible last year. His pitching in big spots, it was incredible. And he's definitely a top 5 pitcher. I have him at 4, a relief pitcher. I have him at 4. He's really close to being that top guy if he can duplicate that. But a lot of guys can do it once. A fair number of guys can do it twice. A couple guys can do it 3 times. There have only been a handful of relievers in my lifetime that have been able to do it for a prolonged period of time. Kirby Yates 4. Number 3 is Aroldis Chapman. Aroldis Chapman is a big game pitcher, big spot pitcher. He's had a lot of moments where you can look back and say he choked, he didn't get the job done at a big spot. Obviously, the glaring one is Game 6 of the championship series last year in 2019. But he has become so popular, now of course on the Yankees, that it's sort of a situation. It's almost like a Tom Brady situation, right? We highlight all of his mistakes. If every relief pitcher was under the spotlight as much as Aroldis Chapman is, we would see a lot more glaring errors, glaring blown saves. Aroldis Chapman is still a big-time clutch, big spot pitcher, and he has transformed his game from a pure fireballer to a complete hard-throwing relief pitcher. And I have him at number 3. His numbers were very good, 2.21 ERA, not incredible, and 25 walks is a lot. But he's number 3 to me because he still gets it done in big spots. And I think when everyone in the league is on, he is the best reliever in baseball. I think that his stuff has been so good for so long, and he finally has enough command to when he's on and no one can touch him. So he's number 3. And number 2 is Josh Hader. Now you're probably wondering who number 1 is. A lot of you probably figured it out. But Josh Hader gives you length, 75 innings last year, absurd number of strikeouts, 138 strikeouts last year. 37 saves, 6 holds, 7 blown saves. I don't always love him in huge spots. That's the only glaring weakness. Blown save in the wild card game last year. If not for that, the Nationals would have been out in the wild card game and the Brewers advance, and then who knows what happens. So he just has to be a little more clutch for me to see him as the top end reliever in this game. But I think stuff. Decent command, okay command, gives you more length than any closer in the game for sure. I mean, he can shut teams down for 2 2/3 innings. It's remarkable. Consistency, dependability, he's healthy, he gives you length, he gives you strikeouts, he gives you outs in general. Josh Hader, I think as a pure reliever, talent-wise, probably the best in the game. But in big spots, he doesn't always get the job done, especially last year also in the postseason. So he's 2. And number 1, maybe a shocker, Taylor Rogers is the best reliever in 2020. Not last year. Last year he was remarkable, but not quite the best. I think in 2020, Taylor Rogers emerges as the premier relief pitcher in Major League Baseball. I'm going to read you his numbers because he is, honestly, he might be the most underrated pure player in the game right now. 2.61 ERA. In 69 innings pitched, he appeared in 60 games. So he's giving you some length there. 90 strikeouts, 11 walks. 90 strikeouts, 11 walks. He had 30 saves, 10 holds, and 6 blown saves. So he was 40 out of 46 in save opportunities. The home run is a glaring weakness. He gave up 8 home runs, which is quite a few. But if you take swing and miss stuff with command, with pitchability, best all-around reliever in the game. Best pitchability, probably the best command of any closer, and his stuff is now good enough. I mean, he's sitting 95, 96, touching 97 with big-time bowling ball sinking type stuff, 2 good high-spinning breaking balls. I think that he is the most consistent, the most dependable. I think if he can take that step up, which I believe he will in 2020 in his command, I think maybe that velocity becomes a little bit more consistent, right? He's touching 97. I think at times he's actually touched 98 with his sinker. If he can get that up to consistently sitting 97, 98, and his breaking balls are there, I think that coupled with best command of any reliever, best pitchability of any reliever, really, really, really clutch reliever as well. Thrown into so many different difficult spots last year. I mean, this is a moment where the stats don't tell the whole story in a relief pitcher. He was thrown into so many difficult spots. They depended on him because they really didn't have a closer last year. He emerged as one of the game's best. And he ended up with 6 blown saves, which is pretty, I mean, it's average, right, for someone with 46 save opportunities. But, very tough spots. Just, I mean, they threw him into the fire on numerous occasions, and he got the job done as best he could. And I think that Taylor Rogers now in 2020 is going to be the best reliever in baseball. So just to recap, my top 10 relievers from 1 to 10, I have Taylor Rogers, Josh Hader, Aroldis Chapman, Kirby Yates, Roberto Ozuna, Liam Hendricks, Ken Giles, Seth Lugo, Brad Hand, and Brandon Workman. So reliever's tough. It's really, really tough, but that's what we got. That's what we got. Now, I told you I was going to hit you guys with this yesterday. Coming at you today. We did, leading up to the draft, we did team needs. We did my top 29 who I think teams should have taken. After the draft, we talked some of the prospects. We talked busts. We talked steals. We talked ceilings and floors. I'm going to give you my top 10 best pure prospects from this year's draft class. I think at the end of when everyone in this draft class has retired, this is, I think, who is going to have produced the most value for their team. It's a really weak draft class. Really, really weak draft class. Probably the weakest draft class I've ever seen, especially on the hitting side. But here are 10 guys that I think will produce tons of value for their team. Number 10 is Tanner Burns. Tanner Burns from Auburn. He has been, the model of consistency there. Stuff is there, but pitchability even more so. Command even more so. I think that you're looking at a guy in Burns that most scouts see as a safe pick who can be a 3, maybe a 2. I think his stuff is going to actually improve. I think that he is going to develop into an ace. I think by the end of his career, he is a definite ace. And not a top of the line guy. I think 10th most valuable in terms of this draft class, I think, is Tanner Burns. Like I said, the command is there. The pitchability for sure is there. And I think the Indians got a steal in Tanner Burns. Number 9 is Luke Little. Luke Little has the opportunity to be the game's best relief pitcher. Luke Little, drafted by the Cubs in the 4th round. He touched 105 in a bullpen session earlier this year leading up to the draft. 6'8", cut 30 pounds. Now he is a athletic 230. I think the floor is quite low. His command is not there. But I think he will develop command. I think he's athletic. He's big and strong. He's 6'8", 230. I think he'll refine that, and he's going to throw so hard, and his slider has a ton of spin. I think that he's going to be the best reliever in baseball at some point. I have him at 9. Maybe not the best reliever in baseball, but definitely the best reliever in this class. I have Luke Little at 9. Then I have Jackson Miller at 8. Obviously, leading up to the draft, he was projected to go in like the 4th round. I had him much, much higher than that. I think he is the best catcher in this draft class. And the Cardinals agreed with me. And they took him early. So, I think that you got athleticism, probably the best athlete of any catcher in this draft class. You got, big time arm, right? His receiving and blocking isn't quite there, but all of his flaws are things that he can definitely correct. Offensively, he's going to produce as well. He's going to be a very balanced, very dependable, really, really good head too. I think that he is, in terms of his intangibles, working with the pitching staff, I think he's the best pure catcher. I think the Reds got a steal. I think I said the Cardinals before. I meant the Reds. They took him, I think it was 65th overall. And I think they got a steal there. Best pure catcher in this class. I have Jordan Walker 7th. I think Jordan Walker is a high ceiling, low floor type guy. And we talk about ceiling and floor a lot, but we don't always talk about the probability of them reaching their ceiling or not, right? We talk about what they could become, the lowest, common denominator for them. But people have different, right? Like some people are more projected to reach their ceiling than others. I think Jordan Walker will. He's 6'5", rocket arm, big power. Defensively, I think if in the National League now with the universal DH, I think he could develop into a DH type role. I think that, maybe at first, maybe he'll sort of pan out more at first. But the Cardinals got a big time bat. If he can refine his defense, get a little bit, more athletic, more nimble with his feet, can be a nice third baseman with a rocket arm. I have Jordan Walker at 7. At 6, Asa Lacy. I think that he is going to reach close to his ceiling, if not his ceiling. Dependable, has gotten the job done at every level he's played. Dependable lefty, good velo, great pitchability, very good command, balanced, can get lefties out, can get righties out. At Texas A&M, it was a highly touted prospect out of high school, decided not to sign, and did even better at A&M. He's been improving. I think that he is a top 6 player from this draft class. Asa Lacy, I just think that he's too refined. He's too, his pitchability is too good for him not to succeed. And I think with an uptick in stuff, he's a surefire ace and a top 10 pitcher in the league. Ace of AC6. Number 5, I have Garrett Mitchell. I've wavered on Garrett Mitchell. He has been very inconsistent, which I don't necessarily mind as a position player prospect coming out of college. I don't necessarily mind inconsistency. I look for ceiling more so than floor with hitters. I think that Garrett Mitchell has the intangibles, elite speed, elite athleticism. He's going to play defense. He has really good bat speed, really good hand-eye coordination. He's never going to be a big-time power bat, but Garrett Mitchell, I think, is a top 5 player in this class. I see him, like a Brett Gardner type, right? Speed, defense, good bat speed, can put the ball in play, and I think he has a little bit more pop than Brett Gardner. And the intangibles, too. I think he's a leader at UCLA, was the clear leader of that team and the best player on that team. And he reminds me a lot of Brett Gardner, lefty bat, similar swing. So I think Garrett Mitchell is a top 5 player from this class. I think he's going to be even better than Brett Gardner, his comp, in my opinion. Number 4, this one is tough because Ed Howard, I have at number 4. He's a guy that I think has a pretty low ceiling. So you could say, right, how could somebody with a low ceiling be the number 4 player in this class? I think the bulk of his value is going to come from here, the intangibles. Ed Howard is a leader, great intangibles, great energy. Coming into that Cubs organization, he is a lifelong Cubs fan from Chicago, was on that Chicago Little League World Series team. He's going to be the leader of that team. I think he's going to lead them into multiple postseason runs. That team is going to be really, really strong in a couple of years if they play their cards right. Athletically, super good athlete. I think offensively he's limited, but I see him. You can compare him a little bit to Javi Baez in terms of the leadership qualities, the intangibles, the defense. The best defensive shortstop prospect, I think, since Dansby Swanson, probably coming out of the draft. That is the best high school defensive shortstop prospect I think I've seen. Offensively, he's definitely limited, so it's hard to putting him at 4 was tough for me. I think his defense is going to be so good, and I think his intangibles are going to be so good that he's going to bring that much value to that Cubs franchise. And this is a guy that I think will reach close to his ceiling, if not his ceiling. I think he is mature. I think that he is hardworking. I think that he is super athletic and can, develop his game in many different ways. Defensively, I think he has the opportunity, and I think probably will be the best defensive infielder in the game in his prime. But he's limited offensively. But I have him at 4, Ed Howard. Austin Martin at number 3. This is a guy that I think it's really, really tough to see him not being in the top 5 here. To see him as not a starting shortstop at some point, I can't really see that. I think his floor is so high. And I think his ceiling, it's not necessarily off the charts, but I think he will reach it or close to it. Athletic, leader, good intangibles, 5-tool guy, really, really good coordination, good strength for his size, good speed. He just does everything well. Doesn't do anything extraordinarily well. But he's going to be that dependable middle infielder who can hit for contact, give you 15 to 20 bombs, probably 20 by the time, at that point. Home runs are going to be up for sure, I think, than in years past. Defense, right? Again, he doesn't do anything stellarly. Is stellar also an adjective? I'm not really an adverb, I should say. I'm not really sure, but I think he's going to reach close to his ceiling. If not his ceiling, I think Austin Martin is the 3rd best prospect in this class. Number 2 is Max Meyer. Max Meyer, number 3 overall pick by the Marlins. Stuff. I mean, I think he's going to hit 100 at some point. He is long. He is athletic, strong. He's only 6 feet. So the only, injury concerns. A lot of scouts have injury concerns, but his delivery is repeatable and he's athletic. I don't see a lot of injury concerns there with Meyer, even though he is a shorter guy for somebody who throws so hard. Stuff. I mean, he can spin. His slider is wipe out. A lot of people see him as a reliever. I don't. I think he's a Walker Buehler type. Front line command. His command isn't excellent right now, but I think it will improve. He's athletic. He has really good pitchability. I think Max Meyer is a top 5 starter going forward, at some point for the Marlins. Not top 5 for the Marlins, top 5 in the league for the Marlins. Max Meyer. And speaking of a Walker Buehler comp, I've said this for a year now. Jared Kelly, 2nd-round pick of the Chicago White Sox, in my opinion, is the best player in this draft class. I think he was – there was a point in time during the draft when I thought he was going to go undrafted because he's a high school prospect. I thought after the first round, he's not going to sign, right? So nobody's going to draft him. The White Sox took him in the 2nd round, and first of all, I've been so impressed with his talent, velo, command. Pitchability is the best I've seen from a high school arm, maybe ever, coming out of high school. All that, tangible stuff as a pitcher, super, super impressive. Dominated the high school ranks, dominated the showcase circuit. Then he gets signed gets drafted by the White Sox. And I thought, okay, 2nd-round pick, it's really unfortunate. He's going to go to college. He's going to waste a couple of years there. Not waste, but I think he's ready soon. I think that he can break out when he's 21. And then he signs with Chicago. I was so impressed with his reaction. No, hatred whatsoever, no disappointment, just ready to get down to business, ready to get rolling. No disappointment that he wasn't a top 1st-round pick, at least that we could see. He's just ready to compete, ready to improve, and ready to crack into the big leagues. And I don't think he's going to lose a lot of salary money and bonus money going in that 2nd round because I think he's going to get a massive contract at some point. I think he is the best player from the 2020 draft class, Jared Kelly from Texas, high school pitcher out of Texas. It's a sleeper pick for sure, but I'm telling you right now, I think Jared Kelly is the best player from this class. So that's going to do it for today's show. We talked some Mike Trout. We talked some Tuesday top 10 relievers. Might do DHs, I'm not sure. And we talked top 10 players from this draft class. That's going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching. I don't know if we'll be back at it tomorrow. I'll let you guys know, guys and girls know. I'm not sure. I just don't know. But yeah, Sunday, I'm trying to transition into this Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday type schedule. So thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, recommend if you feel inclined to do so. And have a healthy, happy, and safe rest of your Tuesday. You might see me tomorrow, maybe Thursday. We'll see. But thanks again so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's show. And we'll be back at it, if not tomorrow, probably Thursday. So thanks for watching. Have a good one. Peace.